September 4th, 2024, Apalachee High School in Winder, Georgia. Just a typical Wednesday, about a month into the school year, but before the final bell would ring that day, a 14-year-old freshman would change everything. He opened fire, killing 4 people, 2 students, 2 teachers, and injuring 9 others. It became the deadliest school shooting in Georgia's history. But this video isn't just about those 6 minutes of chaos. It's about the year of warnings that were ignored. It's about a hysterical 10-minute phone call from a mother that couldn't stop what was already in motion. It's about a dangerous obsession hiding in a teenager's bedroom and a father who bought the gun anyway. We are going to break it down, the minute-by-minute timeline. That morning, where a simple mix-up of names cost precious time, we'll look at the shocking series of red flags. This is the full, unfiltered incident of Apalachee High School shooting, a story of failure, of heroism, and of the questions we are still asking a year later. Let's begin. Imagine a place that's supposed to be the safest place in the world for a kid, a high school in Winder, Georgia, about an hour outside of Atlanta. Apalachee High, with its nearly 2,000 students, was just a normal, sprawling American public high school. It was a place of routine, of ringing bells and crowded hallways and lessons. But on Wednesday, September 4, 2024, just about a month into the school year, every single one of those routines shattered forever. That morning, a 14-year-old freshman named Colt Gray got on his school bus. In his backpack was a concealed SIG Sauer M400, a type of semi-automatic AR-15 style rifle. How a 14-year-old ends up on the bus with that weapon is still a mystery. We will spend a long time trying to answer this. The school, like many others, did not have metal detectors, so there was nothing to stop him. Even before the first shot was fired, the morning was threaded with chilling sense of dread. In his first period of algebra class, Colt asked his teacher a question that in hindsight freezes the blood. He wanted to know how the school would respond to an active shooter. The teacher responded the comment, but that warning email didn't reach everyone who needed to see it. Then the text started. To his father, Colt wrote, "I am sorry. It's not your fault. You are not to be blamed for any of this." To his mother, a simple, devastating, "I am sorry." His mother, Marcy Gray, received that text and immediately understood something was terribly wrong. Around 9:50 that morning, she placed a frantic 10-minute call to the school. She warned them of an extreme emergency and pleaded with administrators to find her son. At almost the same time, the school had received another anonymous call warning that 5 other schools would be targeted and Apalachee would be the first. School resource officers sprang into action, searching the halls for Gray, but in a tragic twist of fate, there was another student in the school with an almost identical name. In the confusion of the moment, the officers found and apprehended the wrong student. For over 10 critical minutes, they believed they had the right kid, while the real threat was still moving through the building, utterly unseen. Colt had left his algebra class around 9:45 a.m. The classroom doors at Apalachee lock automatically once closed, so when he walked out, he locked himself out. He went into a student bathroom in what's known as the J Hall. Inside a stall he prepared, he emerged wearing yellow plastic gloves, the rifle now out of his backpack. He went back to his algebra classroom and knocked. A student went to the door, looked through the window, and saw the gun. When the teacher told the student to open the door, the student replied, "No, he has a gun," denied entry. Cole turned and walked into a nearby classroom. Inside, he opened fire. The sound of gunshots, witnesses reported about 10 to 15 rounds, ripped through the ordinary morning. In that classroom, 14-year-old Christian Angulo was killed. Panic erupted. Teachers who had just a week before been issued new ID badges with panic buttons from a company called Centigix began pushing them. The system triggered a hard lockdown alert which flashed in large red letters on every smart board in the school. The wording was so ambiguous that some students conditioned by drills initially thought it was just another exercise. In the chaos, there were incredible, selfless acts of courage. A wounded student, after realizing he'd been shot, managed to get up and slam his classroom door shut, blocking the shooter from entering. In another room, students pulled a mortally wounded teacher back inside and used their own shirts in a desperate, futile attempt to stop the bleeding, while the others barricaded the doors with desks and chairs. Outside, the first 911 call came in at 10:20 a.m. Dispatch records show the call volume was so high that some callers immediately got an automated message about high traffic inside the school. The panic button alert from the new Sentijex system wasn't logged until 10:22 a.m., 2 full minutes after the first traditional 911 calls started pouring in. This delay raises tough questions about the technology schools are investing in and whether it actually speeds up help. The school resource officers who had been searching for the wrong student now raced towards the sound of gunshots. They engaged Colt Gray in the hallway. He surrendered to them, laying down his weapon as instructed. By 10:30 a.m., just 6 minutes after the shooting began, he was in custody and the immediate threat was over. But in those 6 minutes, he had changed everything. When the students were finally evacuated to the football field, they walked past a scene of horror, abandoned backpacks, phones, and shoes scattered on the floors. Some saw police officers trying to block the view of a body on the ground of blood. The toll was immense. 4 people were dead. 2 students, 14-year-old Mason Skirmhorn, remembered by friends as a light-hearted teenager who loved his family, video games, and Disney World, and 14-year-old Christian Anguolo, who his sister described as a very sweet and caring person, and 2 teachers, 39-year-old Richard Aspinwall, a math teacher and an assistant football coach, a husband and a father of 2 daughters, and a 53-year-old Christina Rimai, a math teacher students knew as patient and kind. 9 others, 8 students and 1 teacher, were wounded. 7 of them had been shot. In an instant, Apalachee High School earned a grim, unwanted title, the deadliest school shooting in the history of Georgia. The aftermath was a blur of sirens, frantic parents, and a community plunged into grief. But as the dust settled, a more disturbing picture began to emerge. This was not a story that started at 10:20 a.m. on September 4, 2024. The warning signs had been blinking red for over a year, and they had been seen, noted, and ultimately set aside. To understand how this happened, you have to look back. You have to look into teenagers' bedroom, into family conflicts, and into a series of conversations with law enforcement that should have changed everything. The story of that day is a story of 6 minutes of violence, but the story of how that day came to be is much more longer. The morning of September 4th, inside Apalachee High, there was the world of attack, chaotic, violent, and mired in minutes. Outside, another world unfolded, mired in agonizing hours as a wave of human response crashed against the school walls. Inside the classrooms, the reality was raw and immediate. Students like Jacob King, a sophomore, were startled from a doze in world history class by the sound of about 10 gunshots. For many, the mind refused to accept it at first. It wasn't until they heard an officer's voice yelling, "Put down your gun," that the abstract nightmare became terrifyingly real. In geometry class, Callie Ebner and her classmates ducked behind their teacher's desk and then watched as that teacher, acting on pure instinct, began flipping the desk over to barricade the door. Beside her, a classmate prayed and she held his hand while they waited, a small act of connection in the paralyzing fear. In a health class, Lila Farrell saw the words "hard lockdown" flash on the smartboard, and without a word, she and her classmates began piling desks and chairs in front of door. These were not drills. This was horrifying culmination of a lifetime of active shooting training executed by children. At the same moment, a different kind of wave was forming in the surrounding neighborhoods. Chris Comfort heard the sirens screaming towards the school. Soon the news began to trickle out through the frantic text chains, local news alert, and the ominous thrum of helicopters overheard. By noon, the main road to the campus, Hay Moon Morris Road, was a gridlocked river of brake lights. Parents in cars, unwilling to wait, began abandoning their vehicles and walking, some marches over a mile under a beating sun, driven by a single desperate need to confirm their worst fear wasn't real. It was a silent, fearful visit. And into this chaos, the community poured its helpless love in only way it knew how. Neighbors like Comfort didn't know what to do, so they did the most human thing possible. They set up tables. They bought out coolers, filled out water and sport drinks. They handed out granola bars, applesauce packs, cheese crackers, and even cold, cubed watermelon to the exhausted, terrified walkers and the drivers stuck in the creeping line of cars. "It's hot," observed one teenager helping at the table, "and it's scary." They worked in shifts for hours. This simple act of providing sustenance becoming a profound gesture of solidarity. One neighbor there with her homeschooled daughter noted that some kids walking past hadn't eaten since last night because they didn't have time for breakfast. Meanwhile, inside the secured perimeter, the first wave of reunions was happening on the football field where students had been evacuated. The scene was one of surreal association. The bright green field under a clear sky, filled with the sound sound of muffled sobs and frantic phone calls. Freshman Michelle Moncada was in tears, knowing people she cared about had been shot. She saw her friend on the ground, a bullet having grazed him. "It doesn't feel real," she said, a sentiment echoed by countless others. For parents like Erin Clark, who had raced from her job after receiving terrifying "I love you" text from her son Ethan, finding him sitting alive on the bleachers was a moment of indescribable relief. He told her how he and his classmates had barricaded their door. "I am so proud of him for doing that," Clark said. "He was so brave." Then the fear for the future set in. "It makes me scared to send him back," she admitted. "I don't know what I am going to do." This was the human wave, not of violence, but of response. It was students holding hands in the dark, teachers turning desks into shields, neighbors handing out Gatorade, and parents running until they found their child. It was the immediate, organic, powerful reaction of community whose fabric had been torn, beginning the long, painful work of holding itself together, even as the investigation into why it had been torn apart was just beginning. This collective trauma, this shared experience of fear, desperate care is what directly sets the stage for the next inevitable question. How could a system designed to protect these very people have failed so completely? The tragedy of Apalachee High did not erupt from a vacuum. Its seeds were planted more than a year earlier, in plain sight, in warnings spoken directly to authorities, and in desperate pleas within family home. It began in May 2023, over a year before the shooting. The FBI and deputies from the Barrow County Sheriff's Office arrived at the home of Colt Gray and his parents. They were following up on a serious tip. Anonymous threats about a potential school shooting had been made on the online platform Discord. The digital trial, investigators believed, led back to Colt. The specific Discord username chillingly referenced Adam Lanza, the shooter who killed 26 people at Sandy Hook Elementary School, and did it so in Russian. When confronted, both Colt and his father, Colin Gray, denied any knowledge or involvement. Faced with their denials and perhaps the murky nature of anonymous online threats, the investigators closed the case. They deemed the tip unsubstantial and looked no further action. The door was shut, and a critical opportunity to intervene at the earliest possible stage was lost. But the concerns within the family only deepened. In the summer of 2024, just months before the attack, Colt's maternal aunt and grandmother became increasingly alarmed. They saw a boy in profound distress. They later told investigators that Colt was expressing homicidal and suicidal thoughts. Their warning was explicit and terrifying. They said he shouldn't have a gun. This wasn't a vague worry. It was direct assessment from people who knew him. They tried to get him help, arranging a therapy session, but in a pattern that would become tragically familiar. That plan fell apart. When his grandmother was injured and couldn't take him, his parents failed to get him to the appointment. The cry for professional intervention went unanswered. While these internal alarms were sounding, Colt's father, Colin Gray, was taking actions that directly contradicted them. That previous December, in 2023, he had purchased a Sig Sauer M400 rifle as a Christmas gift for his 14-year-old son. Can you believe that? This was after the FBI visit. Then in late August 2024, after Colt had asked his mother to be put in a mental asylum, his parents argued about his access to guns. A plan was made to take Colt to a mental health center, but it too collapsed. Instead of securing the weapon, Colin Gray did the opposite. In the days leading up to the shooting, he took his son to buy ammunition and accessories for the very rifle he had gifted him. The disconnect is staggering. A family member warning the boy shouldn't have a gun while his father was equipping him with one. Inside Colt's bedroom, the obsession was not hidden. When investigators searched it after the shooting, they found what they described as a shrine of sorts. The walls were decorated with the pictures and clipping of infamous school shooters like Nicholas Cruz of the Parkland massacre. We will discuss that in some other video in detail. He had spoken openly to his grandmother about his fascination with Cruz. This was not a passing interest. It was a dark, focused fixation. He wasn't just curious about a violence. He was idolizing its criminals, studying them, and he was planning. He left behind a notebook in his classroom, a detailed blueprint for the attack. It contained step-by-step instructions, a diagram of the school, and a cold, calculated estimate that he could kill up to 26 people. This was not an impulsive act. It was a plotted mission drafted by someone who had spent a long time thinking about it. Every one of these facts, the FBI tape, the family's warning, the father's purchase of the gun, the shrine, the notebook, existed on its own as bright red flag, yet they never converged into a single actionable picture for any authority figure with the power to intervene. The school didn't know about the FBI visit or the family's fear. The FBI had closed their case. The father, who held the most direct power to secure the weapon, ignored the pleas of his own relatives. The system, such as it was, consisted of isolated silos of concern that never connected. The series of unheeded warnings create a haunting and frustrating narrative of what if the FBI probe had dug deeper, what if the mental health appointment had been kept, what if the father had listened to the woman in his family and locked the gun away. The tragedy of Apalachee is in large part the story of those unanswered questions. It underscores a painful modern truth in an age of fragmented information. Seeing the whole picture of a person in crisis is often the one thing our system are worst at doing. The dots were all there, but no one was empowered or perhaps felt compelled to connect them. In the aftermath of Apalachee High School shooting, a fundamental question echoed through the grief and the news reports. How was this possible? The specific path that placed a SIG M400 semi-automatic rifle in the hands of a troubled 14-year-old traces directly back to the specific and permissive legal landscape of Georgia. This isn't just a story of one father's decision, but of a framework of state laws that enabled that decisions to have catastrophic consequences. In Georgia, the sale of semi-automatic rifle, like the one used in the shooting, requires no permit and no mandatory gun safety course for the buyer. More critically, Georgia stands as one of the remaining states without a strong child access prevention law, often called as a safe storage law. This legal void is immense. It means there is no statewide legal requirement for gun owners to securely store their firearms locked away and unloaded in homes where children live or may have access. This lack of a secure storage mandate is a glaring chasm in the state's legal framework. Experts point out that secure storage is proven to be dramatically reduce youth gun violence, with households that lock firearms and ammunition seeing up to 85% fewer unintentional injuries. In the case of Apalachee, the father, Colin Gray, legally purchased the rifle as a Christmas gift for his son. There was no law that made it illegal for him to keep that firearm accessible to a teenager who had already exhibited disturbing warning signs. The issue of access is not isolated to one family. Data reveals a devastating national pattern. Roughly 3/4 of school shooters under the age of 18 get the gun from their home or the home of a close relative. It's statistic that transform a policy decision into matter of direct life and death relevance. An estimated 4.6 million American children live in homes with at least one loaded and unlocked firearm, creating a reservoir of risk in communities across the country. The absence of law requiring secure storage in Georgia means the state does not hold gun owners accountable if a child can or does access an unsecured weapon. Following the tragedy at Apalachee, a bill offering a modest $300 tax credit to gun owners who purchase safes was proposed in the Georgia legislature. It was small incentive, not a mandate. That bill was rejected just weeks before the shooting occurred. In the legislative session that followed the shooting, lawmakers did not pass a school safety bill focusing on mental health resources and threat assessment teams. However, they again failed to pass any substantive gun violence prevention measures, including meaningful secure storage legislation. This political inaction persists despite a stark reality. Georgia has the 12th highest rate of gun homicide in the United States, with over 2,000 people dying by guns in an average year. The state ranks 46th in the nation for the strength of its gun laws. The national legal context further clarifies how this could happen. Federal law draws a distinction between handguns and long guns, which include rifles, while it prohibits licensed dealers from selling handguns to anyone under 21. It allows those same dealers to sell rifles and shotguns to individuals 18 and older. For private, unlicensed sales, like a sale between individuals at a gun show or online, federal law provides no minimum age for the purchase of a long gun. This means a 14-year-old cannot legally purchase a rifle from the store, but the legal framework does little to prevent them from obtaining one from a private source, or as in this case, simply being given by a parent. Georgia state law mirrors this, setting no minimum age for the possession of a long gun. The weapon used at Apalachee was a lethal combination, a semi-automatic rifle legally purchased by an adult, legally given given to a minor and legally kept in a home without a mandated lock or safe. The focus on hardware and laws feels cold, but it is the necessary foundation for understanding the preventable nature of this event. It shifts the question from an unanswerable why to a more tangible how, and consequently a more urgent how do we stop it from happening again. The legal environment in Georgia created a clear runway for this tragedy. It placed no barrier between a teenager in crisis and weapon of war, relying entirely on judgment and responsibility of individuals within a system designed to offer maximum freedom with minimal accountability. In the wake of shooting, while some lawmakers pushed for new security databases and mental health supports in the schools, others argued passionately that without addressing the foundational issue of gun access, they were merely treating symptoms while ignoring the root cause. Behind every headline from that day in September, there are faces, there are names, stories, and futures violently erased. This chapter is not about statistics or timelines, it is about the people who were lost and about those now bound to a tragedy they helped create. We begin by honoring the 4 lives taken from Apalachee High School. The first victim was 14-year-old Christian Anguolo. He was freshman, just beginning to navigate his first year of high school. His family remembers him as a kind and caring kid, one who loved playing video games with friends and soccer. On the night before the shooting, Christian gave his mother a tight, meaningful hug, a final embrace she was vowed to carry in her heart forever. His older sister, Lisette, described him as a very sweet and so caring brother who was deeply loved by many. He was a young man who was, as she put it, barely starting his first year of high school and still figuring out his sense of style, his sense of who he was. The second student lost was Mason Shermerhorn, also 14. He was remembered by his family as light-hearted soul with a great sense of humor who lived to tell jokes and give big hugs. His sister, Alana, shared that he was learning to play the trumpet because she did, aspiring to be like her. Mason was, like so many boys his age, passionate about video games, spending time on his PlayStation 5 and VR headset. A family friend said simply that he was a funny, creative kid who should have lived a long life of making others smile. Among the educators killed was Richard "Ricky" Aspinwall, a 39-year-old math teacher and assistant football coach. He was a dedicated girl dad, devoted to his wife Shauna and their 2 young daughters. Students describe him as a sweet, kind teacher who would always push them to do well. On the football field, he was a coach, a defensive coordinator, respected by his players for his genuine care and belief in their potential. One former player said, "Coach Aspinwall believed in me when I didn't believe in myself." In the chaos of shooting, students in his classroom acted heroically, pulling him to safety and using their own shirts in a desperate attempt to stop his bleeding. His family stated he died a hero, trying to save his students' lives. The final victim was Cristina Irimi, a 53-year-old math teacher born in Romania. She was a vibrant, joyful woman, deeply connected to her culture and community and known for her love of traditional folk dancing. She and her husband were unable to have a biological children of their own, so she poured that maternal love into her students, treating them as her own. Incredibly, the day she was killed was a day of celebration. She had baked a cake and brought pizza to class to have a late birthday party with her kids. Students recalled her patience, her corny jokes, and how she never made anyone feel dumb or struggling with math problems. A friend said she was so jovial and full of life that her husband is now at the lowest point of his life, unable to comprehend why this happened to his love. 9 other people, 8 students and 1 teacher, were wounded in the attack. All were expected to survive their physical injuries, but for the students who lived through the terror, hiding behind desks and texting their parents, "I love you," in fear, the psychological wounds are profound. One mother recounted how her daughter, after being evacuated, did not want to return to her classroom to retrieve her belongings, haunted by the memory of what happened there. On the other side of this tragedy are the accused, 14-year-old Cole Gray and his father, 54 years old Colin Gray. Cole Gray has been charged with 55 counts, including murder and aggravated assault, and prosecutors are trying him as an adult. The case has faced delays as the court awaits a crucial medical evaluation of the teenager, which will guide the defense strategy. As a juvenile, he cannot face the death penalty, but the key legal question is whether any plea or conviction would result in life in prison without the possibility of parole. Investigators portray a careful plotted attack, citing a notebook he left behind with step-by-step instructions and a diagram in which he estimated he could kill as many as 26 people. The charges against his father, Colin Gray, mark a significant legal development. He is the first adult 12 in Georgia, known to be charged in connection with school shooting. He faces 29 counts, including second-degree murder and manslaughter. The core of the prosecution's case is that he purchased the SIG M400 rifle, used it in the shooting as a Christmas gift for his son. Investigators allege he did this despite being aware of his son's deteriorating mental health, his obsession with other school shooters, and despite having been visited by the FBI and local sheriffs over a year earlier to discuss online threats linked to Colt. His trial has been moved out of Barrow County over concerns of pre-trial publicity and is scheduled for February 2026. The mother of the accused shooter has spoken publicly about her anguish. She said she received a text from her son that morning that read, "I am sorry, Mom," which filled her with petrifying dread. She had called the school days earlier, seeking the inpatient mental health treatment for Colt, and was on the phone with the school for 10 minutes that morning, pleading for them to find him. She has expressed her horror and guilt to the victims' families, stating, "If I could take their place, I would in a heartbeat." This is the human landscape of Apalachee High School shooting. It is a map of profound loss, of vibrant lives reduced to memory, and of a chain of accountability that now stretches to include a parent's alleged actions. The community and the nation are left to grapple with the faces behind the headlines and with the devastating truth that for 4 people and for countless others forever changed, September 4, 2024 was the last day of everything they knew. The act of violence at Apalachee High School lasted only minutes, but the work of justice, healing, and reckoning has only just begun. The path forward for the community of Winder, Georgia is long, marked by memorials and court dates, by acts of support and search for elusive answers that may never fully come. In the immediate aftermath, the community's first response was one of collective grief. Students, parents, and neighbors gathered in City Park that same evening for a prayer vigil. 4 bouquets were laid for the 4 lives taken. In the days and weeks that followed, the Barrow Community Foundation activated a crisis fund that raised over $1 million from donors across the country, a testament to both the scale of the tragedy and the wave of support it generated. This fund is not just for immediate needs. It is a deliberate, locally led effort to anticipate the long-term costs of trauma, disturbing grants in measured rounds to organizations providing mental health services and support for victims, students, and first responders who will be dealing with the psychological aftershocks for years. For those directly affected, like the families who lost their loved ones or the students who witnessed the horror, access to professional care is critical. Resources such as the Disaster Distress Helpline and local partnerships with counseling agencies offer a lifeline, often at no cost to those impacted. The goal is to build a scaffold of support around an entire community that has learned the hard way that trauma from an event like this does not simply fade when the news cameras leave. However, the questions raised by this case probe far deeper than a single father's actions. They tug the very fabric of the systems meant to protect child. An opinion piece following the shooting pointedly asked, "Where were the adults?" and expanded that question beyond the home. It highlighted reports of a troubled home environment for the shooter and asked where child protective services had been during years of apparent distress. This inquiry points to a systematic dilemma. We see a pattern of leakage where multiple warning signs, a prior FBI investigation, a mother's frantic call to the school, ominous texts, and fascination with past shooters were present but never combined into a coordinated intervention that could change the course of events. In the tense minutes before the shooting, a critical system failure occurred when school resource officers, alerted by mother's call, accidentally apprehended another student with nearly identical name, losing precious time that might have been used to locate the real threat, while the rapid response of those same officers is credited with ending the attack once it began. That initial confusion remains a haunting what if in the timeline of failure. These technical and human failures feed into the broader, unresolved national debate about prevention. The shooting at Apalachee immediately reignited discussions in state legislations about school security measures and gun laws. The presence of armed schools resource officers is credited with shooters' swift surrender, leading some policymakers to advocate for more armed personnel in schools. The new panic button system, worn by teachers based on Elisa's law, was activated and did alert authorities, but it also raises questions about whether technology alone can outpace a determined attacker. For many others, the core of the debate remains the weapon itself and the ease of access to it. Experts and advocates point to the absence of state safe storage law in Georgia as glaring policy failure, arguing that a secure firearm in the home could have been the ultimate preventative measure. The site data showing that in a majority of school shootings, the minor obtained the gun from a family member, making secure storage not just a safety issue but often the final line of defense. The path to justice has become a slow procedural march marked by new faces and long-awaited evaluations. Nearly 16 months after the shooting, the legal case against Colt remains in a state of suspended animation, its progress bottlenecked by critical psychological assessments and a revolving door of legal representation. In a brief status hearing on December 9, 2025, Colt Gray appeared in a Barrow County courtroom. Those present noted a dramatic physical change in the now 15-year-old. Gone was the dyed blonde hair from his booking photo, replaced by darker, slicked black hair and glasses. By his side was a new attorney, Aisha Broderick, appointed to his case just 2 months prior in October. She is the third lawyer to represent Gray since his indictment, a fact that has contributed to case sluggish pace. The core issue halting progress is an incomplete medical and psychological evaluation of Gray. Attorney Broderick informed the judge that this assessment is still underway and is now expected to be finalized by the end of February 2026. This report is not a mere formality, it is foundational. Its findings will directly determine what additional legal motions the defense files and will ultimately dictate what path this case needs to go moving forward. The judge, seeking clarity on the delays, accepted this timeline and scheduled the next hearing for March 18, 2026. The latest delay continues a pattern. Back in May 2025, Gray's previous attorney had indicated the teenager was moving towards entering a guilty plea, stating, "We should be good to go." That potential resolution has been on hold for months. Prosecutors have signaled they would accept a non-negotiable plea, meaning that they would not recommend a reduced sentence. The central unresolved question in any plea or trial remains the same: whether Gray would be sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, or if there would be a chance for release someday. As a juvenile, the death penalty is not an option. While Colt's case awaits its next step, the separate case against his father, Colin Gray, is poised to move forward first. His trial, severed from his sons to ensure an impartial jury, is scheduled to begin on February 9, 2026. Prosecutors allege Colin Gray provided the semi-automatic rifle used in the attack as Christmas gift to his son, despite being aware of the teenager's deteriorating mental health and obsession with the past school shooters. He faces 29 charges, including second-degree murder and involuntarily manslaughter, and could face up to 180 years in prison if convicted on all counts. Meanwhile, the pursuit of accountability is expanding beyond the criminal court. The family of victim Christian Nguolo has signed plans to pursue civil legal action. Their attorneys argue there were multiple failures by agencies, including the Barrow County School District, that allowed Gray to obtain weapon and access the school campus, ignoring warning signs that could have prevented the tragedy. The final bell at Apalachee High School rang on a normal day, but nothing that followed has been normal since. The story we have traced, from the frantic morning texts to the cold calculation in a notebook, from the vibrant lives lost to the unprecedented charges against the father, do not end with a neat resolution or a lesson learned. It does not end with a closure. Instead, it dissolves into a series of stark, lingering images and a silence filled with questions that have no easy answers. The story of Apalachee High is not unique. It is a pattern, a recurring American nightmare, with the names and locations changed. It is the 385th mass shooting in a year, the 139th instance of gunfire on school grounds. It is a data point in a statistic and a universe of grief for a town called Winder. The community will heal in its way around the scars. They will hold annual wakes and they will wear their blue and gold school colors with mixture of pride and sorrow. But for everyone else watching, the question hangs in the air, heavy and unavoidable. Seeing it so clearly, understanding the mechanism so completely, what does it change? Until next time, see you.